Welcome back, and thanks for listening to the Clive Barker Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the works and worlds of Clive Barker. This is episode 158, where we catch up on the news, Morgan Creek's developing Nightbreed again, an update on our interview book, and what's going on with Hellraiser Judgment and Nightbreed the Cabal Cut. We also talk about the short film The Offer that features many cast members from Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Also, please buy a t-shirt! Thanks again for joining us at the Clive Barker Podcast. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Joe.
Hey, this is episode 158, and we will go right into the news. Paul Kane's Hellraiser's book. I think you wrote this one, right? I think there was some new information about the release of that book that's been kind of in limbo for a while.
That's right. A few days before Halloween, on October 26th, author Paul Kane did a hashtag Horror Lounge Clive Barker chat on Facebook. And it was, he said, feel free to ask me any questions or just shoot the breeze about Clive Barker's work. And one of the questions I asked him was if there were any news about the Hellraiser's interview book to come out in the near future. And we talked about this when Paul Kane was here. And I think we talked about this every time Paul Kane was here. And I discovered that, wow, I mean, it's been a while since this book has first been announced as pre-ordered. I'm trying to figure out here, when was the time I made my first pre-order for this book? It was going to come out from Avallard Publishing. And I think
it's like
I'm looking at my...
or something like that, right?
It was before that, I think. Oh, wow. Let's see. Yeah. I was still living in Portugal at the time, and it was like 2012. That's when the book was first announced. It's been 5 years that this book has been, being shopped around and I guess promoted as upcoming. I mean, when Paul Kane was with us, he said it was going to come out on December of last year. And now we're in November of 2017. So hopefully it'll be coming out soon. I'm sure it'll be a great book because Paul Kane said that he made so many interviews with so many people who were connected to Hellraiser films, including even Kevin Yeager, who agreed to do an interview about Hellraiser Bloodline, which is something I'm really looking forward to because, hey, yeah, that is.
Yeah, and I wonder if part of the delay was because it was sort of happening concurrently after a while with the Leviathan stuff. I mean, they have that expansive documentary about Hellraiser 1 and 2. And
yes,
and the book, the coffee table book, and Phil and Sarah made a book about Hellraiser to put in the Arrow box set, and they're also working on another Hellraiser book.
Right, and keep in mind that 2012, the Hellraiser franchise was still like pretty much in the dumps, and I understand why that wouldn't be a good time to put out the book. So now that we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Hellraiser, and all these things are coming out, this is the perfect time. And Paul Kane replied to my answer in his Horror Lounge Clive Barker chat by saying, last I heard a few days ago, Jose, there was an ebook imminent and physical to follow by end of year. So again, maybe it'll come out at the end of this year. So hopefully that will become a reality.
Yay, that's good.
Yeah,
that's
really
right.
Good.
2017 has been a really positive year for Hellraiser. Where
you're
right,
yes.
2012, everybody just had a bad taste in their mouth from Hellraiser Revelations.
Yeah, that you had to buy eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are some people that actually like it. I mean, just because it's an original Hellraiser script, and for me, that's not a good enough reason.
That's true. And now we don't know what's going to happen to Hellraiser Judgment either.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Geez. Well, and we're going to talk about Hellraiser Judgment again here in a little bit. But we did. Oh, there was the Morgan Creek rebrand and reboot.
Yeah. So, do you want me to talk about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
You did some research for this one, right?
Okay, yes. I did some research, and I talked to some people who know people at Morgan Creek. And so what happened was Deadline Hollywood, the website, posted an exclusive announcement. Morgan Creek was going through a rebranding process. And, of course, we've heard about this before, that Morgan Creek had sold its the international rights to their library of films to Joe Roth's Revolution, and then Joe Roth's Revolution was purchased by another group of investors and all that. But now they were trying to sell the domestic rights to their library of films, except for a few select properties they wanted to keep, and those included Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, Major League, Young Guns, Dead Ringers, Diabolique, Pacific Heights, and Clive Barker's Nightbreed, which is really interesting.
That's cool because it makes me feel good about all of our efforts on Occupy Midian, because if you think back to like 2009 or 2010, they would never have thought we should hang on to Nightbreed.
Oh, sure, yeah.
They would have been like, yeah, whatever, that movie that tanked.
I mean, come on. They told Mark Miller at some point that when he was asking them, hey, how about, trying to find the footage for the direct, another Blu-ray stuff. And they were like, not even worth the cost of upgrading to Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And I was like, that must have been so painful to hear.
Yeah.
And then, of course, 2012 rolled in and, Russell Charrington stepped in with his Cabal cut, and then things got moving, and here we are. But so Morgan Creek went through a rebranding process and changed its name to Morgan Creek Entertainment Group. So I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to expand and license their properties and start working with investors and financiers that want to produce reboots and TV shows based on some of their properties. And they said here that Clive Barker has been involved in the pitch for a Nightbreed TV series. And of course, we've talked about this before. We've talked about other attempts at making a TV series. We've mentioned that Clive Barker had a TV series proposal back in 2012, co-written with Matt Venn. And read that article that we have on our blog, and check out episodes 31 and 86, because these are very relevant to what we're talking about, especially the attempts at developing the Nightbreed TV series.
Right, that's been going on since the very beginning of the Cabal cut in 2012.
Yeah, of course, because it just totally made sense, right? I mean, when something is back in the public eye, that's when it's the right time to try to develop it. And we saw that with the Boom Nightbreed Comics, Boom Studios, and those started out really strongly, although at the end the last few issues were a little lackluster in my opinion. But they're out there, and they're being sold. And the Nightbreed Archive came out with the old Nightbreed stories from the Epic.
I hope they finish that, because they
me too.
did the one volume.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll do the second volume soon. And hopefully
help us too, because we're in our episodes right now where we've been talking about the Nightbreed comics, the old Marvel Epic ones.
Yeah, we have to keep digging out the 25-year-old comic books that we have on the shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
So yes, and so interesting things about this is they mentioned like a Dead Ringers TV show, and I'm like, well, what are you going to do about that? I mean, it's like you're not going to have Jeremy Irons and is this going to be an anthology thing where it's like twins is the theme of the TV show? It seems weird, because the story is a great movie. It's one of Cronenberg's best films, I think. And I don't know. Yeah, it is weird. And it's based on a true story of two brothers who are doctors. So I don't know what's going to happen. Like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective as a TV show, or even like a salt.
They're not gonna. I mean, it seems like that whole movie is based around Jim Carrey. I mean, if it
exactly.
How can you make a TV show on? I mean, I guess you can. I mean, you just have to wait and see what they actually come out like.
Right. I mean, you can do that. I mean, but you remember what happened to When Harry Met Lloyd, like the sequel, the Dumb and Dumber. It was Dumb
and Dumberer, right?
That's it. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Dumb and Dumberer, When Harry Met Lloyd. That movie didn't have Jim Carrey, what's the other guy's name? Jeez.
I can't remember his name either. But
Jeff Daniels. Daniels.
There we go.
Yeah. So, and that was a horrible movie. I actually saw that once in a bus trip that I was taking, and someone put that movie. I was like, oh, okay, sequel for Dumb and Dumber. Yeah. And then I was like, oh my God, this movie's terrible.
I had heard that that was like the studio or something did that without any creative involvement from the people who made the first one.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure.
And so now they're making a second movie themselves, right? That's just ignoring that one.
Yes, the Dumb and Dumber 2, T.O.
Or I think it's already out, isn't it?
Maybe? Yeah, that movie came out a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah, I'm like, without TV and stuff, I don't know what's going on anymore.
Oh, you should watch that if you get a chance. It's really funny.
Is it?
It is really funny. Yeah, Jeff Daniels and Jim Carrey. Years later, it's just hilarious. But anyway, so yeah, we saw what happens when people make TV shows out of movies. Like, remember the Friday the 13th TV show?
I do. It was bizarre. I used to stay up late watching that when I was. It
was about a store that had these haunted objects in it, right? It was just weird.
No Jason at all. It was kind of like there's a more recent TV show called like Warehouse 13, I think it is. And it was a lot like that, where it was like they would hear about some haunted, cursed objects and go collect them to put in their warehouse.
Right. So the takeout from this whole thing about Morgan Creek really is that they changed their name. They're trying to develop all these like things, and one of them is Nightbreed. So let's see what happens. We've been hearing some names that might be attached to interested in developing the Nightbreed TV show. They're big names.
Yeah.
One of them starts with S. The other one starts with N. So we'll see what comes out of there.
Right. Yeah.
And yes, hopefully that they'll be able to also work with Clive Barker on this and Seraphin and, make a good show out of it.
Yeah. I'd be really interested to see. We heard a rumor that the Nightbreed TV show wouldn't be like a follow-up. It would kind of start over at the beginning. Kind of like the comics, the old Epic Comics did. They started at the beginning.
That's a good approach to draw the audience in who may not have seen the movie, I think.
Yeah, of course,
it's a good strategy.
We would want to see some. We would want to see Ann Bobby and Craig Sheffer, but they may or may not be able to do something like that anyway. Given their
given that it's been over 25 years now.
Yeah, and they're on to other things, and
Sure, yes, of course. So the BarkerCast T-shirts are back for a limited time.
Yeah.
We had a lot of rewards on our Kickstarter, and we're still hard at work on a couple of them, especially the book. We also kind of recruited a couple more people to our team from our contributors. So, David Sharp and Rob Ridenauer, they've joined our team in transcribing the episodes because it takes a long time, right, Ryan? It takes an hour for every 10 minutes of dialogue that we transcribe. It's sorry, we've been doing as fast as we can, but we're still a little ways from having all the stuff typed in.
Yeah. So as far as the T-shirts, we sold some at our last fundraiser, but not a lot, and we had a lot of rewards, and Kickstarter doesn't make it easy to combine rewards. They gotta like email us and say, hey, if I give this much money and do this, will you remember to add this on for me? And because of that, we had one T-shirt that kind of slipped through the cracks. It's like, oh yeah, he added a T-shirt onto his order. I completely forgot. And so we've opened up the T-shirts again, hoping that we can sell a few more here during this. We'll have them up until Wednesday, which is, what is the date on Wednesday? Today's the 11th, as we're recording this. So
15th.
Yeah, and through Wednesday the 15th. So that's your chance to get an order in. We'll have a link on the show notes here, and there's a link, on the website there where you can buy. You can put in a T-shirt order if you want. It'll help us out if you get one, because then we don't have to, the more we buy, the cheaper they are per T-shirt.
Right. So you can check out the post on our blog, and we'll repost it on Facebook. And you can click the PayPal button on the blog and include in your message the name and mailing address, the T-shirt size that you require, and then it's $28 for the T-shirt and $10 for U.S. shipping or $15 for international shipping. Yeah. So this would really help us out. So if you want to have a cool T-shirt, I'm biased because I made the design, but based on you guys' feedbacks and Rob and you. So I think it's a great T-shirt. I wear it all the time.
Yeah, me too.
And I've had some people say, "Hey, that's a cool T-shirt." So let us know if you want some T-shirts.
Yeah, I mean, and part of it is that we have to ship them to ourselves and then ship them out to the, because they don't do, this company, Custom Ink doesn't do shipping to individual people. They just send you a bundle.
That's right.
Yeah.
So again, until Wednesday the 15th, if you're interested, please consider buying a T-shirt. You would really support us. And we haven't even done a Kickstarter again this year. We're still trying to finish up our rewards from the other Kickstarter. So that would really help out because the time to cover our expenses is coming up pretty quickly. But yeah, consider that. It's a nice T-shirt. Think about it, won't you?
Yeah. Yeah, and the books. You just briefly mentioned this already, but we are hard at work on those again, and we may offer a second chance at the books because they're going to be close to finished, but not quite finished by the time we get to our next round of fundraiser. So, yeah, we may open that up again to a second round of book buying, which would be
yes. And we may start doing a small, short series of posts showing you some transcribed sections that may be interesting and giving you more information about the book and how the process is going for that. So stay tuned. We'll be showing you some interesting snippets here and there of past interviews because we interviewed quite a few people. And this is a good segue to say that since we've been around for so long, the Clive Barker podcast blog reached 1,000 posts.
Yeah. Our episode 156 post was our 1,000th post. Of course, we don't have 1,000 podcast episodes, but yeah, on our blog we do a lot of news posts. If you only listen to the podcast and subscribe, we refer to our blog a lot, but CliveBarkerCast.com, we hit our 1,000th post. So I put a little image from the very first post on there that said, "Hey, guess what? I'm going to start up a Clive Barker podcast," and it's a picture of me with the Abarat Islands.
Yeah, the beautiful moment, the triptych of the Abarat Islands. So yes, you've mentioned here a very quick. On our blog, we mentioned we had 156 episodes at that point. We had Facebook groups and pages with thousands of members and followers. We get about 24,000 podcast downloads per year, and the number is gradually going up. So it's been a trip. It's definitely been a trip to make this, and we just want to keep doing it as long as we can.
Yeah. So that was exciting, encouraging. And I don't know, I didn't know when we started this that it would be going on for 6 years, but yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah.
And in January, you're going to have the 2017 year in review episode. So that's going to require some work.
That's right. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. And, so back to Clive Barker news. Phil and Sarah Stokes over at clivebarker.info have started releasing individual play scripts, and we talked to them about this, or they talked about this, I think back in 2015, because I remember putting that on our coming up soon little section on the website there, that they were going to do individual plays, and now the first two are out. We've got The History of the Devil, which is probably his most well-known play, but also one called The Magician. Which, did you remember that, or had you heard of The Magician before?
I've seen the poster for it in the Shadows in Eden book. I don't particularly remember anything about the play, although I think there may be some mention of it in an interview in Shadows in Eden.
It wasn't published in Forms of Heaven or Incarnations.
No, it hasn't. To my knowledge, it hasn't. I mean, there's been other plays who have been published over the years in fan newsletters and stuff, but The Magician, I've never heard of anywhere that had it. So this is a first.
Yeah.
And of course, The History of the Devil is one of Clive's strongest plays. I mean, it's been the one that's been consistently getting the most productions out there. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to see it at the Phoenix Theater, done by the Nearly Naked company, I think, Nearly Naked Theater, which they actually did the play naked, and it was pretty funny. Very impressive, very appropriate. So yes, the Clive Barker play scripts. What a nice thing that the Clive Barker Archive is doing.
Yeah.
And what a treat that they're so accessible price wise, right?
Oh yeah, they're like $9 a piece, and there's a bundle price, right? What is
It's nuts. It's The Magician goes for $8, and The History of the Devil goes for $11.50. And there's a plays bundle at the Clive Barker Archive store, which is The Magician and The History of the Devil from $18.75 plus shipping.
Wow.
And this is nuts. Phil and Sarah, we love you guys. Thank you for doing this. This is amazing. And also the covers are Clive Barker paintings, and they're a treat. They're really wonderful.
I need to go buy those. I haven't gotten to it yet, but that's something I want to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I have to buy it too. I mean, I know that people like our friend David already got it and has already posted pictures of it and said, "Oh, this is so cool." And both volumes are edited with additional afterwards by Phil and Sarah Stokes. So there you go.
Yeah, and it's nice that another effect of these things being so accessible is that maybe we'll start seeing more productions around the world of Clive Barker plays.
Of course, and it's not just a play. It's not just written stuff. It has, for example, The Magician has 14 photos of the original production, poster art, and manuscript pages from the Clive Barker Archive. The History of the Devil has the full script, 7 photos of the original production, poster art, and manuscript pages from the Clive Barker Archive. So there's more graphic material in there that you can see, which makes this such a nice package. It's nuts how accessible this is. And in a time when most stuff that comes out from Clive Barker is like super limited, this is amazing. And I really commend Phil and Sarah Stokes of the Clive Barker Archive for doing this. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. I can't wait to get those. Maybe that is something we could do for an episode in the near future here.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
We kind of overplanned our podcast a little, from our Kickstarter last year. Our schedule's really tight as far as like trying to fit in all the things that we said we were gonna cover.
Yes, but at the same time, we also became weekly, so now we can do that.
Yeah, that's true. We kind of divide up the news into their own special episodes instead of trying to it was exhausting to do like 2.5 hour episodes.
Oh geez, yeah. And but it was fun to do the commentary tracks though.
Yeah, those are fun. And we're not going to have I mean, I don't know what else we could do for those for next year.
We'll see. Yeah. Maybe we can hopefully talk about the Nightbreed TV show if it comes out. So you mentioned this at the beginning when we were talking about Hellraiser, and I'm going to go back to this, but there's been some news that came out about Hellraiser Judgment, or like I like to call it, Hellraiser X Judgment.
Right.
That apparently Gary Tunnicliffe doesn't like it when you call it Hellraiser X. Anyway, so Hellraiser X Judgment has some news, and the news is that he did an interview with filmmakers Adam Green. I mean, Gary Tunnicliffe did an interview with filmmakers Adam Green and Joe Lynch for the podcast Geek Nation, and gave a brief update on Hellraiser Judgment. Yeah. So the thing is that there were some scenes where it's really intense, and one of the actresses almost fainted. Of course, this is all stuff that the director / writer of the movie comes out and says this stuff. It's hype.
Yeah.
But okay.
And the dog was traumatized, but not physically.
And it says, I'll explain it to you because you're going to be like, Jesus Christ, involving a small dog. No, the dog doesn't get hurt, but it does go through some ellipsis trauma. And then we have 3 grips leave the set during a sequence when they said this is utterly screwed up. So I don't know. Some people thought it was interesting. Other people were like, oh, I don't think I want to watch that movie now. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, and somebody had mentioned that Paul T. Taylor at one point had said it was kind of more in line with Saw. And to me, watching a movie like Saw is a chore. I don't really want to see, I don't know. But they have to keep talking about the movie, because if they don't, it's going to just go off of people's minds, and then it may never get released. But if they keep talking about it, then maybe people will take an interest because of all the crap that's going on with the Weinstein Company, and now they're getting into bankruptcy. So, it could just get lost.
Right. I mean, look what happened to what was the name of that sequel? Amityville: The Awakening, that opened up in October, at the end of October, before Halloween, which should be a good time for horror movies, but I think it made less than $800 on the box office opening weekend because they just dumped it. They just dumped it without any marketing, without anything.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I mean, if we had heard the opening, if we had heard the amount they made on screenings for the Midnight Meat Train, it probably was terrible too, because it was only less than 100 theaters.
Sure. So we don't know if this might happen.
$800 though.
Yeah.
My God.
So yeah, there were also other factors that contributed to that, because I think apparently a couple of weeks before that it was free on Google Play and all that. So I guess at that point, whoever wanted to see it had seen it. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen to Hellraiser Judgment, if it's going to get put out, if it's just going to sit in a shelf for another year or so, if it's just going to get dumped. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want to be Gary Tunnicliffe.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, like him and Gary Tunnicliffe cares about seeing it get released, and Paul T. Taylor cares about seeing it get released. People in the Hellraiser community are, for the most part, curious. There are some of them that are angry that it doesn't have Doug Bradley. But we can only talk about this movie so much when we can't see it, and we have no way of knowing when it's going to come out.
So yeah, I wouldn't want to be Paul T. Taylor and Gary Tunnicliffe right now, because poor guys. I mean, they wanted to be part of something that was going to come out for the fans and stuff. And even though
they have no power as to get it released.
Of course, no, they don't.
Just keep the discussion going so that it stays fresh in people's minds and puts pressure on whoever can get it released or help get it released.
Right. Because they're fighting an uphill battle here, starting with the fans, because, obviously we've been burned so many times, and there's so many people who still, you go on Facebook and they're like, oh, no Doug, no Hellraiser.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I understand that. I really do. But, I also hate it when movies get made and then they just sit on a shelf, as bad as they may be, like the Fantastic Four made by Roger Corman.
Yeah, right.
It's like, and then it comes out and people just turn it into a cult classic. I don't know what's going to happen to this movie.
How did that didn't really ever get released, like
officially,
right? It's
no.
On YouTube or something, right?
Right. It got leaked. I think someone came up with, someone finished editing the movie and then just released a bootleg of it, or leaked it to someone, and then that just started going in the circuit of conventions, and
that's like the poster child for movies that are made only to keep the rights to something.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if that movie still exists in physical form, because it might have been destroyed for all we know.
Yeah.
And so anyway, yes. So that's the update on Hellraiser Judgment, and that's pretty much it. So we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little. That makes me a little nervous to watch it, to hear that it's got some kind of screwed up torture.
Oh, sure.
I don't want.
And you also have issues with blood and stuff. So
yeah. I don't know. We'll. I mean, I really like the Midnight Meat Train, but I have a hard time watching that movie too.
Well, I was just watching this movie called Suburban Sasquatch the other day. Where there's a scene where this poodle gets grabbed by Sasquatch and then magically turns into a puppet and gets torn apart.
Oh.
So I'm no stranger to seeing dogs get it in movies, but not when there's an actual dog. Like, people have been bringing this up in discussions on Facebook, like, yeah, Hellraiser had some messed up scenes with rats, and I'm like, you guys know those rats are fake, right?
Yeah.
They're mechanical. They're not real rats that someone nailed to the floor in Hellraiser.
It reminds me, like, when I was a teenager and you kept on hearing, Cannibal Holocaust, it's banned in all these countries because it's so violent. And so a friend of mine and me rented it, and all my only takeaway from that, I don't remember the violence being that horrific, but I remember them actually killing animals right there in the movie in front of us.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is, like, unforgivable.
Well, they do that even in great movies like Apocalypse Now. At the end, there's like this scene where these this tribe in the middle of the jungle is doing some sort of dance, and then they kill a bull or a cow with like machetes, and it's real. They really did kill that cow. So yeah, there are movies. Back in the 70s and 80s, people were still, 60s, 70s. They still didn't really, think about that. I mean, there's that movie John Waters film. With Divine? I forgot the name of that movie. Jesus Christ, I have that movie. Pink Flamingos. There's a scene where two people basically mutilate a chicken, and it's a John Waters film. Yeah. So, there's a history of movies using animal abuse and getting away with it, even becoming cult classics, even though, of course, nowadays that would never fly.
Yeah.
But I would rather not see anything like that in my films.
But and this is not to say that they do that in Hellraiser Judgment. They just said like a dog got traumatized from seeing something, or that's sort of the implication. The dog didn't physically get hurt, but
right.
Yeah,
it's an intense scene apparently. Yeah. So it's part of the hype. We'll see if it ever comes out, which eventually it will in some form or another, but we'll find out. So good luck with that, Hellraiser X Judgment.
That's true, right? I mean, I think these days with the way that stuff proliferates and the huge amount of news sources that there are for movies, they don't typically just sit there and not get released in some form or other. We had some other kind of unexpected news. I didn't even know this was happening, but you worked with Paul Kane to help narrate a book trailer for Sherlock Holmes and the Servants of Hell.
Well, I didn't work with Paul Kane. I'm going to explain this. I worked with the people from Little Spark Films. They made a book trailer for Paul Kane's book using a box from Derek Neal's configuration boxes called the Servants Configuration. Mm-hmm. And even though the book has come out already, I mean, the book came out back, last year, I think?
Yeah.
So this is more like a book trailer that Little Spark Films wanted to do. And they had some narration originally, and I think they weren't that happy with it. So they were wondering, if they were reaching out to people saying, hey, can you guys find someone who has actually knows how to make a British accent so we can dub it into this Sherlock Holmes and the Servants of Hell book trailer? And I posted about it, and I was wondering if, friends on my friend list could do anything like that. And then at the end, I was just like, hey, I got a microphone. I do a podcast. I think I can try making this kind of fake British posh accent. So why don't I record it and send it to them? And I was like, all right, here you go. If you find something better, just please use that other thing. But if you like what I did, fine. So I recorded myself doing the lines from the Sherlock Holmes and the Servants of Hell book. And even though they didn't really get anybody submitting anything, they were like, hey, we liked it. We liked what you did. Can we use it? And I was like, yeah, sure. You don't even have to worry about crediting or anything. Just go ahead and use it. And they actually did, and they credited me, which was nice of them. So, yes, it's on Vimeo, and it's got this Sherlock Holmes character, and he's walking around in dark streets, and he's smoking his pipe, and then he hears this bell. So it's interesting. It's set in Clive Barker's Hellraising world, Sherlock Holmes and the Servants of Hell. This little company, Little Spark Films, is based out of Dallas, and the people I talked to were Joe Manco and Catalina Carita. So thanks for getting in touch with me and accepting my submission, because I really don't know if I did a good job with the British accent, but I did my best. I did what I could. There it is. It's on our blog. Go check it out and read the story, because it's really good. Yeah. Paul Kane's book is really awesome. We covered it in the Barker cast. So
right. And I actually just now got around to listening to that episode because I was so scared of spoilers. But I'm most of the way done with the book. I think I maybe have 100 pages left. So I figured, okay, I'll, and I've listened to all our other episodes, and I've been holding that one back. And even though I edited it, you pre-edited. So all I did was put the intro and the outro on it, and I have never actually heard that episode. So I got to listen to that episode, and I'm almost finished reading that book.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's awesome story. It's take place in Victorian London, and you get all these callbacks to characters from the Hellraiser film. There's a Frank, there's a Frank Cotton, there's a Julia,
Yeah.
and all those people, and Sherlock Holmes, public domain character, great stuff, great voice that Paul Kane reproduces in his story. And Watson as well. Watson is basically the guy who's like telling us the story. So great stuff. Just I loved it, and it was fun to do this because it's just like a 40-second narration, but no big deal. But yeah, it was nice to put that out there.
And this is something just really quickly to kind of go over what's going on with the Cabal Cut, because there have been this has been taking over a lot of my time on Occupy Midian. So the Cabal Cut, we know there were 250 copies available to buy, and a few of them got returned, and so they would set up sales to sell some of the return copies. And there was one point where over at Seraphim they had accidentally put up for sale more than and I think they had sold a couple of extra copies here and there, but they had accidentally put up more than just the returns at one point, and then they sold like 30 more copies overnight while
standard copies.
Yeah, standard copies, right? The deluxe ones are gone. I mean, that's it. They're done. But the
deluxe had a numbered slipcase, and those were just 200. They're not going to sell anymore because they can't. It's numbered. What are you going to do? Do double numbers? You can't do that.
Right, 201. Yeah, so they sold some extras, and they have extras because when you try to manufacture Blu-rays, the minimum order is 1,000. So they have extras of the standard copy, and so they reached out to Morgan Creek and said, "Hey, we just accidentally sold like 30 more copies. Is that okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's okay." And then they sent another email saying, "Hey, can we sell these others? Because and they haven't heard back yet, or we haven't heard. So I don't know the answer to that if they're gonna go up for sale. But I personally think it's great. I don't think that the standard editions need to be rare. But there seem to be other people getting really angry about but now my rare standard edition's not so rare anymore. Thanks a lot, guys, and you should lower the price then." And they already lowered the price. That was supposed to be $75, and it's $50.
Mm-hmm. Right. So my opinion on this is that I think that if they get the money, Morgan Creek gets like a cut of this, then it's a win-win situation for everybody. I don't see what the problem would be.
I hope they say yes and allow it. I really want to see more people out there with.
I hope so too. But again, there's people who are not going to be happy even if they sold the remaining hundreds of copies that they have, because they'd be like, well, even if it's 1,000, our group has 8,000 people, and they do have a point. That's true, but
that,
again,
8,000 people in a Facebook group doesn't equal 8,000 orders.
Right. That's also true.
Yeah.
That's also true. And it's unfortunately, that's the low scale thing of an author's edition made in-house we have to deal with.
And our membership, a lot of it is horror blog people, that just want to get news about Clive Barker stuff, and some
I'm sure there's
like friends of people who were added in there without asking, and
Well, I'd like to think at this point, 5 years in, that the people who are there are people who actually like Nightbreed. And
they are, but there's new members all the time.
Sure. Yeah. So, we'll see what happens, and we'll keep you guys updated. If there's going to be another opening of orders for the Cabal Cut, then, of course, go to Occupy Midian, join the group, stay in touch with us, and we will let you know.
Yeah, and and on the group, he would sell a couple extra here and there when he would sell some copies, some returned copies, and people would post about it on Occupy Midian, and I'd have to delete it because as soon as they saw it being advertised, they're like, "Oh, Morgan Creek might tell us we can't sell anymore if."
It's a complicated situation.
Yeah,
I hope
and
that
I
it
didn't.
gets a good resolution soon. And I just want to restate that neither you nor I actually work for the Clive Barker store, so we don't know any of this stuff unless they tell us.
Yeah,
So don't get mad at us, okay?
yeah. I know. I mean, and it's but yeah, I can't think of any good rational argument to say that more copies is bad.
Right.
I mean, no matter what people say about that, I just can't agree. I want more people to have it. And if somebody says no, I don't want to pay more than $30, well, that's fine. That makes sense for their budget. That's okay, but that doesn't mean trash it.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway. Eventually, I hope that they do allow it and that more people will get it. And then, eventually there's going to be used copies for sale here and there. So I don't know how those are going to evolve in terms of pricing, because I have seen some on eBay already, but it's usually it's a deluxe and the numbered slipcase one, and they go for like ridiculous amounts of money.
I always wonder with those how much of the additional materials they're packing back, because that stuff didn't come in like a neat little package. It's all like bundled in with the shipping box. So how much of that are they actually selling with it? I mean,
no idea. That should be in the auction description. That's right. Not. I don't know. Yeah. So anyway. That's the information that we have about the Cabal Cut. And again, we're not affiliated with the Clive Barker store, or Morgan Creek. So we just run the community. So this is just our information update on the Cabal Cut Blu-ray.
Yeah. So then the last thing we wanted to talk about was The Offer, which is in a way sort of a Hellbound reunion cast party of a short film.
Yeah. So. Dark Ditties presents a Dead Mouse production, The Offer. So I may have messed that up, I guess. But yes, so it's a great movie, a 1-hour film from the same people who brought you Leviathan and RoboDoc and Fright Night documentary and all those great documentaries that we've mentioned here on Facebook. So it's directed by Christopher Griffiths, and based on a story by Gary Smart and Neil Evans, and the screenplay is by Neil Morris and Gary Smart, who we've had on the podcast a few times before.
Yeah.
So good stuff. I saw this and I was really impressed by it. I thought it was a great short film, and I love the cast that they got together for this.
Yeah, that was cool. It was neat to see so many people that I've met in a movie. That was kind of cool. It's like, oh, I know him, and there were some actors I didn't know, and I wonder if they knew them from some other documentaries they made, like Michael Bishop, who played
Bruce Jones.
Yeah, and
right,
or Bruce Jones played Michael Bishop. I was looking at it backwards.
And
like Stanley Rawlings, who played Derek Cartwright.
Right.
Darnell Spence.
Let me look at the full cast and crew real quick and see what movies those people have been in.
I put a screenshot of it on the.
Right. Yeah. So, for example, we do have Ken Cranham is the host. You might know him as Chenard or from the movie Layer Cake and other movies that he's been in. Oliver Smith, who played Frank the Monster, he plays the butler. Yeah. Andrew Barnabas, and I was wondering if this Barnabas is like a reference to the Dark Shadows TV show where they had a vampire called Barnabas Collins. So I don't know if that's a reference to that, but
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And of course, the beautiful Barbie Wilde plays Rosalind Rose Cavendish Harris, the Harris to this big chemical company, I think, Empire.
Yeah. Which we kind of learn about a little ways into the movie.
Right. And we have Simon Bamford playing a character called Jonathan Brooke Davis, and Nicholas Vince playing Sebastian Maurice. And he does a great job with this character. But I think really for me, the actor who really chewed up the scenery and really does a lot is Bruce Jones as Michael Bishop. I think that was the this is the guy who like chews up the scenery throughout the whole film.
Oh,
what a great performance!
He was the car salesman guy, right?
Yeah, the used car salesman. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a little speech at the end that I didn't. I kind of want to go back and watch again because I didn't understand what his confession was. But
right.
But yeah, but I don't want to get into it because we would be spoiling it for everybody. This movie's not out yet.
Right. And I also had a little bit of trouble understanding the dialogue at times. This is definitely more clear for British people who are more into the, certain slang that they use and stuff like that. And the way they speak pretty quickly.
Somebody called somebody a northern something or other, and it's kind of like very British production.
Yeah. But great stuff. And so it's kind of a jigsaw story, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if this is a big spoiler, but
oh yeah. I can kind of see what you mean. I've only seen like a few minutes of Saw because I left when I
right.
But
I think for a 1 hour movie, it does go by really quickly. I was very entertained by it. It's very fun to watch. Very great watch. And also one of our contributors is in it.
Yeah. Danny Stewart.
Yeah, Danny Stewart. He plays the Gimp. So what a scary character. A very unsettling performance by Danny Stewart. So kudos, Danny. Did a good job.
And there's another sort of murderer character that has a face mask and is pretty horrifying. I think it's a legitimately scary movie for sure.
Yeah. So just basically, without getting to spoiler territory, there's a woman, a girl called Gabby. She's basically the character upon which the audience can be introduced to the story. She goes into this beautiful old house, this kind of like decaying mansion, to meet with a pretty amazing bunch of characters. So she goes in, she meets Oliver Smith at the door. He's the butler. And apparently there's been there's a will that's being executed by Barnabas, by the butler. And these people have been selected from the elector registry. So they don't know each other, and they've been selected at random.
Yeah.
And they each receive £5,000 to get to this meeting and hear what the offer that they have to listen to. So, and it just gets complicated from there on.
It was interesting that in the beginning of it, when there's a video of the host, explaining the rules to everybody, and there's at one point where he says if you guess incorrectly, you lose a life, like video game talk almost, and and nobody thought anything of it. They just kind of, they're like, he couldn't have meant what that sounded like, or I don't know. They didn't really talk about it. They just kind of let that slide by. It's like, it was really interesting because it's like nobody wanted to really believe what they were hearing. And there's sort of an aspect of it that, do you know the girl with the dragon tattoo?
Yes.
There was one scene in there that I think about a lot, and I can't remember if it's in the remake or the original because they were so close to each other, but where the bad guy invites the good guy in, and they both know who each other is and what they're up to and stuff, but out of politeness, the good guy comes in, says, "Okay, yes, and he comes in for a drink, knowing that he's inviting himself to danger, and the bad guy says to him, "Out of you are willing to get yourself killed out of politeness." And I thought, that reminded me a lot of what kind of goes on in The Offer, because if people could only be honest with themselves, then maybe they could get out of this alive.
True. This game relies a lot on the ability that people have to self-actualize upon their own shortcomings, but at the same time, it also banks literally on the fact that most people don't want to face that. They don't want to face their demons. They don't want to face their personal shortcomings. Right. Yeah, and they're always going to try to point the finger at someone else.
And they wouldn't first come out and say that they would rather die than reveal their secrets, but we learn through the movie that that's the case.
Yeah. Well, eventually, I think that does happen to some extent at the end, but so I like the characters. They were really fun. Nicholas Vince is this guy called Sebastian, and he's like a thespian that exudes what some people would call class, while others would say pretentiousness. Simon Bamford does a great job being this very corporate, like banker kind of guy. With a Bluetooth piece that stays on for most of the film, even though they don't have any phones.
They gave up their cell phones, but he keeps that on anyway because it's so pretentious.
Yes, and Oliver Smith, his voice is always velvety smooth as usual, and he plays this really amazing posh butler character that gets really creepy near the end.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm not crazy, but I think that Oliver Smith used to do the voice off for a British channel for the announcer of
Sky. I think it was, right?
Sky, was it? Yeah. Let me just look that up real quick. He was like the announcer, just like Penn Jillette was the announcer for Comedy Central at one point, right? So yes, so I do believe that was him, and it's great. It's great to see him. He played Oliver. He played Frank the Monster, and it's such a great thing. You got Chenard, you got the Chatter, you got Butterball, you have Frank the Monster, and you have the female Cenobite, all in one movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Barbie Wilde, also what a treat to see her.
Yeah. She's sort of like the sarcastic, like, give me a break, all these other people. And then you kind of find out later in the movie that she's not really, I mean, she seems like a down-to-earth, relatable character, but then you kind of find out later on she's maybe not.
She's like this Harris. She's this Canadian, cool and collected lady who gets called a Yank and immediately corrects them with, "I'm Canadian, honey," with an exasperated sigh. It's funny. Yeah. That section is funny. So, great music, great score. I really like the way the everything is lit. I think it really, like, it's not, you see that there was some care put into this, and even in the effects department, I want to bring up the fact that the special effects makeup were done by Stuart Conran, who worked in Hellraiser 2, Waxworks, has a long career in special effects. So he did the special makeup effects for this. I'm guessing that after Leviathan, they all had these people's, contacts, so they were like, "Hey, you want to make a movie with us?"
Yeah.
So great stuff. I mean, the soundtrack was composed by Sean Schaefer Hennessy. I also liked it. The soundtrack was really good. Like, especially in the more dramatic tension moments, you see this soundtrack starts getting this crescendo and really adds to it. And holy crap, the sound design. Just the sound, the squishy sounds that happens in some parts.
There are parts that take place in the dark. And so you kind of rely on the sound to understand what's going on.
Yep. So, again, what a character, like the host, Ken Cranham, as Maximilian Francis Benoit.
Yeah.
And it's just
you
great.
You find out there's more, obviously, to the story. They're not being completely honest about what the rules of the game are or about what's going on. And
right.
Yeah, it's cool, but we can't. It's hard to talk too much about it because we don't want to spoil it. For people.
I think
who haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it kind of mixes like a Saw storyline with like a Hellraiser Resurrection thing with a little bit of what am I thinking of here? The Purge kind of thing. So there's a few like things here and there that elements of those stories that come into play in this.
Yeah, or like what was that movie where rich people would hunt?
The Purge?
No, I'm thinking of that action.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yes, what was that called? How does it feel to be hunted? You tell me.
Right, I know what you mean. Yeah. Like the title is escaping me right now because I have to think of the title in English. Yeah, not Double Impact. I forgot. Yeah, but I know the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah. I'm just, since I'm used to thinking of the titles of the movies in Portuguese.
I think it was a John Woo movie, like an American John Woo movie.
Right. So Broken Arrow? No.
Oh no, it was that. God, man, that was probably only like a year apart from that one. But yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry to everybody listening, because you probably all know the answer and you're yelling it into your iPhones or whatever. But
Hard Target.
Hard Target. There it is. Yeah,
there it is.
Wilford
Thank you,
Brimley
Google.
got shot with an arrow, but he was safe because he had a bottle of whiskey in his pocket.
Diabetes.
yeah, yeah, yep. Quaker Oats. It's the right thing to do.
So yeah, like Ray Schemer is the Beast. Darnell Spence plays Daniel Price, who's this kind of quiet guy.
So the Beast was the murderer guy.
Yeah, the Beast is the big guy with the night vision goggles. But so Barbie Wilde, Simon Bamford, Nicholas Vince, Danny Stewart as the Gimp, Bruce Jones as Michael Bishop, and Bruce Jones. Let me see what he's done, because he looks like he probably has a long career. That I'm really sorry I don't know a lot about him, but he was in Coronation Street, which was this soap, I think, 1960. Oh. The Full Monty from 1997, Raining Stones 1993, and he does have a long. Yeah.
I liked his character. I liked his character a lot, and I was kind of pulling for him. And
yeah, he's in Coronation Street. He played Les Battersby Brown. So I'm guessing this might have been a really colorful character in Coronation Street, because definitely he does a great job. Like I said, he chews the scenery throughout the movie.
Yeah.
So definitely the star right there. I mean, I'm sure the other actors are going to be like, "What are you calling him the star? I wasn't there too." It's like, sorry, but his character is just so expansive and so emotional about everything. It's really funny.
Yeah, it's good.
But not a single one of those characters has any shot of redemption throughout. Right. And I thought that was very interesting, that the way they're forced to deal with their personal demons.
And obviously they weren't picked at random from the voter registry.
No, they weren't, right? Yeah, that's true. So I'm sure this is going to be available for pre-order at some point. So let's see. Yes, and Dark Ditties has an Instagram. It's at @dark_ditties, and you can see that's Ditties with a D for Delta, not titties.
Right.
But in their Instagram, you can see a lot of behind-the-scenes pictures. So go check that out, dark_ditties on Instagram. So right. Good stuff, really good stuff. Great sceneries, great locations. And great cast of characters. It was really fun seeing all these people together again for a movie.
Yeah, and if you're reading along with us, our next episode is going to be about we're going to be returning to the Nightbreed comics, the issues 17, 18, 19, and 20.
Looking forward to those. I think at some point Nicholas Vince is going to start writing those comics, so we'll see.
Well, and in this next 4, I think Larry Wachowski actually jumps in.
Oh, great stuff! Yeah. He worked in Books of the Damned.
Right. Yeah. People kind of
and the little thing called Matrix.
Yeah. Right. Of course, people know them for the Matrix and maybe for Bound. But yeah, cool. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. You can find the show notes for this episode, as well as lots of news and features, at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave comments there, or get them directly into the podcast by clicking the Send Voicemail tab on the right. Please follow us on Twitter at BarkerCast or at Occupy Midian. Like us on Facebook and join the Occupy Midian Facebook group. You can listen on the site or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, Google Play, and Double Twist. Look for our apps in the iTunes Store or Google Play Store. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Please take a couple of minutes to leave us a review on iTunes. It means the world to us and helps us spread the word about Clive Barker. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial fan site and podcast that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Films. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.
During the editing of this episode, there was a point where I had to get up and go help my son. Joey had just woken up, and I had to help him set up Minecraft. So anyway, when I got back and then editing the episode, I noticed that while I was gone, Jose composed a song on the podcast. So he may not like that. I don't know if he'll ever even listen to this. But I thought it was pretty funny, so I'm sticking it here on the end as a little Easter egg. Hello.
Hey.